Thank you for joining me again for the Healthy AF podcast. With me today is Frankie Cuell. She's a nutrition consultant in the UK. Frankie, thank you for joining me today.
Pleasure. Lovely. Great to be here.
I'm glad that your name is actually kind of cool. Frankie Cuell. It sounds like almost like a character from an 80s movie, like a lead character in an old 80s movie, it'd be like, kind of, anyway.
Frankie Cuell. Yeah. I had it. The teachers that liked me at school would say Frankie Cuell. There were some other variations though.
I'm sure. Yeah. But we just did a live on Instagram on yours and I appreciated that. It was a fun conversation. I'm so glad you joined me here because I want to get your story. I want to hear what you're all about. And I wanted to just talking to someone else who coaches people on nutrition.
Yeah.
It's nice we can speak the same language.
Yes, definitely.
But again, about you, like what is your primary focus? So as a nutrition consultant, that sounds really kind of broad. So what would you say your primary focus, your ideal client would be who would come to you? You'd be, kind of specialty to work with.
So I don't really have an ideal. My mission in life and the whole purpose of my business was always to be accessible to everybody. And I mean, the people that I see the most they come to see me because they know that I've had my own history with thyroid disorders and hormone imbalances. So I suppose you could consider that my area of expertise. But I've worked with people with chronic fatigue syndrome or just unexplained fatigue, which happens a lot at the moment, what seems to be quite recurrent, and type 1 and type 2 diabetes or just blood sugar irregularities. And then like you, probably just people that come because they think, okay, I really need to sort out my confidence and my physical appearance. That's what bothers me the most. And I don't want people to hold any guilt for that. We all want to look our best. My focus is always going to be from the inside out, fix the inside and the outside will follow and show. So I have to kind of steer people's mindsets back towards health first and the rest will come. But yeah, so I don't have an ideal client. I keep the door open to everybody, and thankfully, everybody that's come to see me has been very, things have been very successful and they have been able to reclaim their health, sort out any weight fluctuations that they were unhappy with. And I think the biggest tool is to just shift people's mindset. That is such a powerful thing when you can get somebody to rethink the way they approach, their external. And yes, it's important to get healthy and fit and eat the right food and all of these things. But I try to make the primary focus a health focus.
Sure. The outside can often be a reflection of the inside, but not always. When the focus is on the outside, sometimes we can make sacrifices that negatively impact or neglect.
Yeah.
Especially things like thyroid.
Yes.
I mean, you can completely hijack or crash your thyroid doing things that you think will make you look better, but for the long term, they're really taking you in the wrong direction. Yeah,
that's a really good point. And that is, I see so many, primarily ladies,
Sure.
and we can talk about that later. It's often a very female focused area. And I think there's a few reasons behind that. But yeah, in the bid to look good, people can really, really attack the thyroid gland and everything. It's such a big system and there's so many other things involved with thyroid function that people just has no idea. So, that can be hugely affected by overtraining.
So what was your...
restricting your calories.
So with thyroid, so what was you mentioned you had a struggle with thyroid that you learned a lot from. What was that like?
Yeah. So really that was a huge part of the lead into my kind of the igniting of my passion for nutrition was because of my own journey. Like many others, we kind of learn so much from our own struggles. And I was born with a thyroid disorder, so mine's quite a rare situation. I was born with partial thyroid, actually about half of my thyroid glands. And I also have some ectopic tissue that floats around in my neck and occasionally tries to join the show and produce some thyroid hormone. So there's a varying levels of complication there. Because one, it makes it very hard to know how much my thyroid gland is producing in terms of hormones on its own. So it makes treating the condition even more complicated. But the theme within mainstream medicine, and this is what I see with so many thyroid patients, is that it's such a one-size-fits-all approach here in the UK. The underlying cause is often just completely overlooked. You don't really get doctors delving into, okay, why is your thyroid not performing properly? It's, it must be autoimmune, must be Hashimoto's. Because that accounts for such a high proportion of thyroid cases, that's just, how you are treated. It must be an autoimmune version. You've either got Hashimoto's or Graves' disease, and we will just do your TSH. So again, just a generic blood test and treat you from there. And you will, which again is problematic for many, many people because it's not a bioidentical treatment. And yeah, so my thyroid gland, I didn't actually find out that I had a partial gland, which sounds ridiculous, until I hit that really tricky age where I was entering puberty and I was going to high school. So I was put on thyroxine at age 9, and they just assumed from blood tests that I had an autoimmune thyroid condition. And then it was only after some scans when things just started to unravel and it went from bad to worse pretty quickly. And I was putting up with significant weight gain, fatigue like you cannot imagine. I remember my dad actually throwing buckets of water over me to try and, in the bid to get me out of bed for school. It was ridiculous. And it was like joint pain as well. I felt well beyond my years, and my body was effectively just shutting down because I didn't have enough thyroid hormone coming through, and no one was addressing the root cause. So I had a battle for many, many years, but I discovered the power of food for optimizing my thyroid function on my own. Because I got so desperate, and I started to work out some really significant connections very early on. I started to read sort of in my early teens. I was reading about what interactions food interactions could negatively impact my thyroid. So I cut out gluten quite early on. And then I went to sugar. That was the next thing. And the ball kept rolling, and I just had a hunger for it. I don't know if that happened to you. Like, you find out this information and it's like, I have to tell people. And it stayed with me. I learn things, and the human body is a constantly evolving study, isn't it? We're just always learning. And everything I learn, I'm like, wow, I want to share that. So that's continued. And the next kind of interesting milestone in my own journey was that I worked a lot of my career early on was with children and in education. And I worked in a school for boys with special educational needs. And there I made some further connections when it came to things like processed foods and sugar, and what this ultra processed sedentary lifestyle was doing to children, let alone what it was doing to adults in later life. Because the environment was quite extreme. These were boys that were on what in England we call the SEN register, and they were either struggling with autism or just a number of behavioural symptoms because of, whatever their journey had been. But the power of removing sugar and gluten, those two things alone, and going to a more whole foods diet was incredible. I was having these kind of like little side conversations with parents, the ones that would listen to me anyway, because again, it was coming out like verbal diarrhea probably well before I was even supposed to be advising people. But a couple of the boys that I worked with for many years and kind of I grew to be very fond of, I would speak to their parents and just have this feedback at the end of the day. And a couple of them just really took on my advice and went to town, and they just applied what in my eyes, what the kitchen detox is. They detoxed their kitchens. They removed all the crap. They removed sugar and gluten from their children's lives. And these boys went from not being able to sit down in a lesson, like throwing furniture, smashing windows, sometimes assaulting staff, to being able to sit down and complete their spellings or read a paragraph in a book, or even just have a like to and fro conversation, which was huge. And the difference that made to them in their education and their home life was, and how that even impacted their parents and the trauma that was going on at home is massive. So yeah, my hunger for it started there, and it's just continued to grow basically. So that's a bit about my background and how it all began try and condense these
No, that's fantastic. I mean, that's a great example of, you saw it and you kind of saw it in your own life, and then you were able to translate that to other people who had a completely different situation, and you saw it repair the situation there.
Yeah.
Or improve the situation.
Yeah.
And through a simple dietary changes.
Yeah, definitely. And, you can take that further, and I have still, like I say, continued to evolve, and I embarked on my own education in nutrition quite soon after leaving that environment that I was in, and the launch of the kitchen detox happened quite quickly and suddenly. The school I was working for was actually academized, and I was just kind of forced to leave that role. And so I was like, right, I'm going to do it. And not long after that, COVID hit. So I was like, wow, this was rubbish timing, but everything happens for a reason. And it's going to be part of my story. And so, yeah. For
sure. So you've been able to correct a lot of your personal issues with the small thyroid gland through diet.
Yeah, absolutely. And the way I was able to kind of manipulate medications, and I've removed a huge proportion of the T4 and T3. So the hormone replacement therapy that I was taking was very much the kind of pharmaceutical version. And so the synthetic hormone as opposed to natural. So I've been able to remove most of that from my life. And I now supplement with natural thyroid glandular, which has been really successful for me. I mean, not everybody likes that approach, but it's been very successful for me. But also I've learned a lot of lessons embarking on a keto diet. So I did embark on a ketogenic lifestyle, and I stuck to that for probably 7 years. It was a very long time. But I actually ended up doing some harm because, and I have now done quite a lot of studying in this area of how prolonged ketosis can reduce your T3 production. And there's a bit of controversy around that. Some people don't agree with that concept and others do. And I think Judy Chow she's interviewed another thyroid specialist, and they've done a great podcast on how this mechanism works and what happens in the body. But essentially, prolonged ketosis isn't a good thing necessarily if you're battling a thyroid condition. But that's where the beauty of carnivore came in, and the beauty of just having more protein, because you can really use the ketogenic diet, but add in extra protein. So you have this lovely ebb and flow kind of in and out of ketosis. And that has been incredible for my thyroid function. And yeah, I think there's several factors that people need to think about when they've been, battling a thyroid condition. It's like, what's your root cause? What labs have you had done? Because oftentimes people will only see the TSH and think that that's all that's available to them. And, how can you optimize it through food and the right treatments? I think it's really important to get to as much of a bioidentical treatment as possible through a mix of T3 and T4 replacement, because that's what you're losing, especially when you have a partial thyroid gland. You are not able to produce enough of all your thyroid hormones. It's not just that T4 that's missing. And again, you can go over to how what's my liver health like? What's my gut health like? You have to assess all these different parts of the body too, because the thyroid hormones have to convert. You have to be quite efficient at the conversion from T4 to T3. And there could be some things going on that compromise that. And again, people are very unaware of this massive feedback system between your thyroid gland, your adrenal glands, the pituitary, and how that also affects your sex hormones. So people might have had a trauma in their life, and that has affected how their thyroid works, simply because they have had this chronically high cortisol for so long that then, has implications with progesterone. And then, it's these things, you can get very complex about this, but I try as much as possible to simplify the whole thing, tear everything back, and just, like you, look at sleep, movement, appropriate food intake, and how you can really, really manipulate not only food timing, but food quality. And when you're looking at a lady, trying to get that in line with your menstrual cycle as well, that's hugely powerful.
Yep.
All of these things, the basics, really, I just think start there and you won't believe what can be achieved just with those things alone.
Absolutely. I've got like half a dozen questions for you right now from what you just.
Okay.
So, you just unpacked a lot, right? That most people don't even consider. So let me see if I can, get through those questions with you, by memory here. So when you say you're supplementing with, are you talking about a bioidentical hormone replacement therapy that you would get from a pharmacist, like compounded, or are you saying you're taking something more like a dried thyroid?
Yes. So basically, I believe the nearest you can get to the kind of bioidentical hormone replacement, you can do it the pharmaceutical route. And I do think that these drugs, the T4 and T3 synthetic hormones that are the pharmaceutical grade hormones, I do think that they're very safe. They're some of the safest pharmaceuticals out there, and thyroid conditions are only on the rise. So I don't want people to be scared of those. And I still have a small amount of levothyroxine that I have in my routine. But in order to get your thyroid to perform as close to what it would do, if you are looking at this from a partial gland, or say you've had a total thyroidectomy, you need all of those thyroid hormones coming together. So you can get that by taking the glands of an animal. So you're just taking the natural thyroid gland from the most common is porcine thyroid gland. So that's from a pig or the beef, so bovine thyroid glandular. And some people can combine those. Some people like to take the porcine and the beef just to get the combination of the two, because there's varying opinions on how both of those perform, and, you know, how similar a pig is internally to a human, and, you know, as well as a cow, you know, that you're still getting something that is essentially from an animal and having to use that for a human. So there are going to be some things that maybe aren't as efficient, but this is what our ancestors were doing. This was always the treatment. Years ago, no one was ever, you know, using these pharmaceutical versions, and they were successfully treating people for thyroid conditions with natural thyroid glandular. And I have found personally it to be much more effective at just making me feel completely balanced. And this is what I see quite a lot, is when you're trying to get the levels right on the synthetic hormone, so the synthetic T3 is called liosirolene, and T4 is most commonly levothyroxine, or I think Synthroid in the US is quite a common one.
Yes.
And to get them exactly where you want them to be, and remember this changes day to day. So some people actually need to have different amounts of their thyroid medication on different days because of the way your hormones go in this cycle, for women anyway. I mean, for men, it is a lot more simple. Yeah, you guys are lucky. But there are ways of optimizing your medication, basically, to really work with what's going on in your body and to try and mimic as close as possible to how your thyroid would be performing naturally. So I hope that makes sense.
Because estrogen impacts thyroid. In fact, would it decrease thyroid or affect the thyroid gland?
So yeah, so if too much estrogen as well as too little progesterone, both of those situations can negatively impact the thyroid. And that's often what you see as well. When someone is estrogen dominant, you're getting a low progesterone situation. Sometimes they're not going hand in hand, but 9 times out of 10, that's what you see. Yeah.
My understanding is women actually have a larger thyroid gland than men do typically because of that.
Yes.
I mean, to handle the regulation and the impact of the increasing estrogen.
Yeah, and estrogen is a growth promoter, basically, and it, you know, is the hormone that's responsible for like that fullness and soreness of your breasts before your cycle, and it's that growth stimulator. So a few kind of links have been made between thyroid nodules and certain thyroid cancers as well, with excess estrogen, as well as, you know, excess estrogen can be a risk factor for lots of other kind of nasty forms of cancer. So it's definitely an area that is overlooked and not understood enough, I think.
For sure. Well, and you mentioned cortisol as well. I think stress and ketosis and all the things that come with that. Long-term ketosis, secular ketosis seems to be much more acceptable to talk about now, much more within the ketogenic world, which is great. We're starting to see people more open to talk about that, because long-term of any kind of stressor. So stress in general, whether it's family, career, you're overtraining, you're under eating, or you're just low carb with ketosis, can, you know, all those stressors can definitely reduce your thyroid production in an effort to keep your body, you know, not to starve to death essentially, or to just to deal with that stress. And so I'm curious how with carnivore, that just that addition of protein, you're saying that's been enough for you to help keep that balance, whereas ketosis was not.
Yeah, because I know.
But so you wouldn't have an added in carb in addition to that?
Some
Or
very rarely, like I might have, if I've had a particularly heavy workout, I might have maybe a few blueberries along with my big carnivore breakfast
gotcha.
but because of the amount of protein that I'm eating, I know that I'm not
Mhm.
in that deep state of ketosis. And actually, I'm probably exiting nutritional ketosis more frequently than I am in it. But that's definitely worked better for me. I've had to deal with maybe a little bit of weight gain in while I've kind of embarked on carnivore and got things where I want them to be. And everything requires a little bit of manipulation, but you can really optimize carnivore in a way that's cyclical as well. Like the way Dr. Mindy Peltz talks about the fasting in a woman's cycle. I mean, she's just incredible and she explains it so beautifully. And if you can look at using the carnivore diet in exactly the same way, everything needs to be cyclical, especially if if you're looking this from a woman's perspective. I think that is how you just get back into rhythm with the design of your body. So there's this whole argument in the carnivore community about high fat or high protein. Well, I would say actually it's both. There are certain times of the month, in that first 2 weeks of your cycle, you can go to town. You can do the long fasts, you can do low carb, but in the back half of your cycle where progesterone is really trying to come in, if you're killing progesterone does not like you to be in this deep state of ketosis, do these really intense workouts, and have, this chronic stress situation going on. Again, Dr. Mindy Peltz will explain how estrogen is very forgiving of cortisol. So if you have this like high powered job and you're under stress and you want to do a long fast and you want to be a bit more intense with the exercise, you can probably get away with that in the first 2 weeks of your cycle. But when you're going into the second half in the next 2 weeks, you can throw things off completely because progesterone needs the opposite of estrogen. So yeah, and it does require some perseverance, and there are all kinds of other considerations like, are you a bit insulin resistant? When you're first embarking on this kind of lifestyle, you need some willpower.
Right.
And you can listen to all of these professionals and, gurus in the keto and carnivore community, and they make it sound so easy. And I think when people come up against these struggles and, or if you have been dealing with some hormonal imbalances and you expect things to move more quickly, I always have to tell people it's just this does require a huge amount of willpower sometimes and a huge amount of patience. So yeah, I hope that makes sense. That was a very long-winded answer to your question.
No, it's true. It's complex. It's a complex answer. And a lot of people don't, especially women, do not think about what they're eating or how often they're eating it affects or how it should interplay with their cycle.
Yeah.
And the workouts, everything else, like the stress level that you're creating through your metabolic stress through your diet, your mechanical stress through your workout, and how that plays with where you are in your
Yes.
cycle. And that's something that has to be considered, should be taught more, should be talked about more for women, because a lot of them just kind of do the same thing all the time, or they just think about the traditional cut back calories, cut back on carbs, but not, and then work hard in the gym all the time.
And it's
But not really health
such a
affecting.
huge
Yeah.
thing for women to let go of that guilt as well. And it's like, oh, I can't be restricting enough. I can't be training enough. I've got to cut calories even more. I've got to train even harder. And it's like, no, your body is just gonna hold on even more to those fat stores, and your hormones are going to be even more irregulated. We've got to sometimes just be okay with not look for perfection in this external image. What looks back at us in the mirror isn't going to be exactly what we want, especially when we've been conditioned by all of these images on social media. We've got, we're in the influencer era where there is just women with six-pack abs, men as well, but women get a desperate hunger for that when they see what that brings to somebody's life sometimes. And that's okay, but it's like, don't sacrifice your quality of life to achieve that. Don't sacrifice your fertility, the long term. Don't sacrifice the long term for a short term bit of gratification, or I'm trying to send these messages to my daughter as well, because you can mitigate so much by starting young, and it's so difficult for the young generation trying to embark on anything remotely healthy. So my next bit of content, I'm really hoping to aim at children. I want to, and parents as well, because it's a minefield out there, and it's a war zone, quite frankly. So, yeah.
It is. It is. I mean, I've experienced it myself just as getting older, doing the same level of, or creating the same level of stress with my diet and my workout that I did in my early 40s. At my late 40s, got into 50s, I couldn't maintain that level of stress. And maybe I shouldn't have been in my 40s, but it started showing up more in my 50s with TSH a little high. My thyroid numbers, specifically the T3, T4, seemed to be fine, but TSH was too high, which means they're stressing out. And sex hormone binding globulin was really high, and which is, again, a stress, and probably a result of meetings. I got high cortisol as well. That was affecting my sleep, affecting my recovery, concentration, and general energy, mental energy. And which means that would, if the SHBG if the sex hormone binding globulin is high, then my testosterone is going to be affected. The amount of testosterone actually used in my tissues is going to be impacted.
Yeah.
It's going to be reduced. And so that would be true with women as well. If you're stressing out, the amount of hormone that you're able to utilize is going to be impacted.
And when you're looking at thyroid issues for guys, and it's less common, but the diagnosis and treatment are exactly the same, and essentially the whole thing is the same, but it's slightly less complex because you've basically just got to tackle testosterone. And obviously men are getting this kind of fill of testosterone. They get every 15 minutes, I think it is, that you get testosterone, and that then needs to go and be converted into estrogen. But so as soon as you've got a thyroid problem, you're up against, some men report erectile dysfunction or some kind of sexual dysfunction. Low testosterone is such a huge issue. Yeah. But then you can kind of treat it from a thyroid perspective. You can treat it somewhat differently because you've just got that one area to fix, and you've got the kind of cyclical thing removed from the situation. So
yeah, I mean, it's managing stress at that.
Definitely.
It's managing stress, and the hormones come back into alignment. You've got to manage your stress recovery, however you want to look at it. But so it's less complex. You don't have as much fluctuation. You don't have the competing hormones going on so much to a large degree compared to women. But I think stress really comes into it. And much of our stress, I would say, I'm sure you found this too, that people self-inflict. If it's not the uber healthy, but your typical person would be through their diet, through eating a lot of processed food, even if they're not in ketosis or they're not doing a real strict carnivore, just the processed food that's coming into their life, as opposed to just eating whole food. alone could create, with the seed oils, processed grains,
Yeah.
processed sugars, they don't realize the impact. They're thinking in terms, most people think in terms of calories, weight, how they look in the mirror, once again, versus the hormonal impact of
Yeah.
of those foods on their body, not just insulin, but again, can affect thyroid, sex hormones. So, I mean, I'm sure you're seeing that it's an epidemic here in US with processed food. I'm sure it's not much different.
Yeah. And it's just getting worse. And I think, there's certain schools in the UK now that have banned meat. And I'm seeing this whole thing unfold, and it's, I think it's not a surprise to many of us that work within this industry that the government have just started to really make it difficult for the ones that are talking sense and trying to push the kind of the importance of having red meat in your diet. But yeah, people are living ultra processed lifestyles, and it's starting from so young because the schools serve up terrible school lunches. Even, I'll pick up my children from school and parents are literally armed with snacks because I think children are even starting to feel that angry, like the hangry emotion is coming out so young, and children have no idea because they're just marketed to straight away, from the word go. All of the fast food chains are targeting children. It's all the bright colors, it's all the cartoon characters, it's all the, wild health claims as well, which just is sickening. And adults fall for it too, but it really starts with our children. And then the parents seem to be kind of controlled by that because it's like, oh, no, stay calm, child. here's the crisps, here's the cookies, just be calm. But it's like, no, we're creating a pattern from so early on, and then we just continue it for years and years and years and years and years. And at some point, our bodies can't cope with that anymore. And many people that end up, booking in with you or I have done that, they've traveled that roller coaster for many, many years. And yeah, I completely agree. It's this ultra processed, sedentary lifestyle, or, with chronic stress thrown in there as well, lack of sleep, and so many environmental toxins as well.
Right. They're malnourished.
Yeah.
Fed.
Yeah, absolutely. And people are surprised when I say, actually, when you're looking at things from a thyroid perspective, I'm telling people to eat low. Like, the thyroid needs calories. It doesn't perform well with this calorie deficit situation, which, I'm really not on board with the whole calories in, calories out thing anyway. But yeah, it all starts definitely with the ultra processed food and the sedentary and stuff and the stress. But yeah, I think to really reclaim your health, you have to look at quite a few factors.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Quality food being one. So do you try to move people towards, at the very least, towards whole food versus processed?
Definitely. Yeah. And I really do push a very meat heavy, if not carnivore. Because I completely appreciate that not everybody is going to want to do a ketogenic style diet or a carnivore style diet. They want to be in harmony with their family. It's even harder to get children on board with anything even similar to that. So I work with people where they're at, and I'll push it as far as I can in order to get them to feel as good as they possibly can. And I find once the process starts and once people feel these lifestyle changes and these nutrition steps that I take them through start to work, the confidence builds, and then it's amazing what happens from there. People just do it themselves because it's like, hang on a minute, this is working. Like, I feel amazing. I feel the best I've ever felt. And, doctors have told me I this would be with me forever. on numerous things. I've seen people with a vast array of conditions now, from type 1 diabetes to cancer, chronic fatigue syndrome, a huge range of conditions. And every time they're shocked what can be achieved with just food and lifestyle factors.
Yeah. It's amazing what we've done to ourselves with our food. And I think the concept is, for many, they can't afford to eat properly. They can't afford to eat whole food. We try to get people to go to the perimeter of how it's arranged in the US is the perimeter of the grocery store. So you have the meat, the dairy, and the produce is on the outside, and all the processed foods and aisles in the center. And so you try to get people to go that way, but they think, oh, it's expensive when you buy this kind of, if you weigh out what you're paying for that fancy box of granola cereal per pound versus just some hamburger, I think you'll find the hamburgers a lot cheaper, actually. So there's a real misconception there, I think, around whole food, and then how much you would want it, you'd have to eat for that satiety, versus when you're eating the garbage, you're hungry 2 or 3 hours later. You're just constantly snacking, and you're consuming really poorly, poor nutrition. There's it would be heavily fortified chemically when they make it, but the food matrix has been destroyed, and you don't have the natural occurring micronutrients in there that you would in natural food and whole food. And so, I mean, how do you address that with food costs?
I've just done a little video on this. It's actually more like a mini rant, but I find it such a difficult area, because at the moment, even within the wellness industry, so much is being monetized. And I like to keep things so real, when I love doing in-person consultations with people, because my home visit is just like another level. I get so just down to the nitty-gritty stuff. So I chose my business name, The Kitchen Detox, because I literally want people to set up their environment for success. So much can be achieved by simply doing that, emptying your kitchen cupboards. And when I mean emptying them, all those tins that you've never used that sit in the back of the cupboards, everything, the pastas, the cereals, the cereal bars, the protein, everything that is processed comes out of those. And sometimes there has been mountains of food, which I still, I will drive that stuff to a food bank, or try and make sure that I limit as much wastage as possible. Although I still think, we're not dustbins. Don't treat yourself like a dustbin. But anyway, when people realize how much they've been hoarding, and then how much better they feel even mentally just by setting up their kitchen with just what they are going to use, it's like headspace is freed. They can write these lovely shopping lists which have just the essentials. And even, included in my home visit will be sometimes even a shopping trip. I will go into their chosen supermarket or their local farmers market, wherever they want to regularly shop, and show them how to save money and be effective with their food choices, not only for their body, but for their bank balance. This is, it's such a huge misconception that healthy lifestyles and nutrition and wellness and all this thing is for the rich. And when I first embarked on doing this, I really wanted to break that stigma that, being healthy is for the rich. Only a famous pop star or a celebrity face can afford a nutritionist. Or, I've managed to save some households hundreds, the amount that they paid to see me, they will make that back tenfold, more than that, hopefully, in the months to follow. Because you just get rid of all the rubbish, and you really shop effectively and with precision, without wastage too. So yeah.
Wow. So what have you found helps people sort of make those changes? You and I were kind of nerdy about this stuff. We look at the science of it. We look at how it affects our
Yeah.
bodies, and that motivates us intuitively. I mean, just innately, that's what motivates us to be. We're motivated by being healthy. We love looking at the biochemistry of it, and
Yes.
it's curious to us, For most people,
No.
that's not the case. And they're going to need something. Yeah, they glass
Yeah.
over. You start talking about this. So they need something bigger than their habit to motivate them to take the long view, because when it comes down to when they're stressed out, whether it's job, family, just not feeling good, whatever it is, their typical go-to is going to be some of these comfort foods, these foods that they've traditionally gone to make them in the moment feel better, hit the dopamine and so forth. So how do you help people take a longer view, even whether it's, weight, doing the quick weight loss, like, we're coming into summer, like the summer body, and all the dumb decisions that come from doing that, or just in those moments where they're just having to change habits and sustain them for a long time. It's like, how do you get people to take their eyes off of what they consider their immediate needs, and make their long-term needs?
And this actually overlaps with the money thing too, because it's amazing what people can come up with when they think there's a quick answer. When someone's selling the weight loss supplement, the super duper 12-week cleanse, the parasite cleanse, the mold detox, the magic shake, people will outlay hundreds and sometimes thousands in the bid to have an answer to their health issues now, or to get that body now. And I have to, from the word go, when I consult with somebody, I know that I'm up against that kind of block. So, I mean, rarely, but sometimes I'm not. But you have to immediately change someone's outlook on this. If you have spent the last 20, 30, 40 years treating your body like rubbish, we have to kind of get a bit real here. Your body needs time to heal. And the only real healing that's going to take place is going to take some time. If you go on some juice detox that sounds like it's, it sounds like it's too good to be true. It probably is. But it's soul destroying to people. I will see people embark on these, especially these juice cleanses, and they will spend a lot of time on the toilet. They might lose some weight, but that will come at a cost. Like, no one wants to be around you. You stink to high heaven. You're not sleeping well. You've probably got some palpitations. You're chronically stressed. You've got bloating, diarrhea, gas. Like, it's not a pretty picture at the end of this, juice cleanse situation. Yeah.
You're probably in a bad mood as well.
But people do this in a bid to feel better quickly. So yeah, I have to re-educate people on why this is a long-term thing. And the most effective thing to say is it took a while for your body to get sick. It needs some time to get better. And a lot of that is actually not an aggressive process. It's a really kind, gentle process. There might be some heavier strength days thrown in there if that's always the movement of choice, in my view. But you have to be okay with getting a bit uncomfortable. Sometimes being uncomfortable is, just breaking addictions and, just rethinking things.
Right. Changing the way you think about yourself, your body, and how you want to address your life. Exactly. Yeah. Well, thank you, Frankie. You've unpacked a lot here for people to think about. Really, there was so much in this. It was amazing. Where's the best place?
So I've just designed, I've redesigned my website recently. So thekitchendetox.com. My booking system is really straightforward. So if you want to consult with me and book in a one-to-one consultation, either via Zoom or in person, you can do it all on my website. My snacks are still for sale. So if you have got more of a ketogenic outlook and that comes in useful, then they're there. I've also, probably my biggest social media presence is on Instagram, and that's where I'm running my 2023 series. And I'm also doing weekly live clinics. So if people want to just hop on the live and ask me questions, I've done, all sorts from libido to having a supplement graveyard. That was one of my topics. I try and cover some stuff that is just things that I see recurring within my consultations. I'm trying to bring that into these lives so that people can access this information. So yeah, that's where I am most of the time.
Fantastic. Yes, that's how I found you on the Kitchen Detox on Instagram. So it's been quite educational. So, but we that's what we had our little 1 hour long discussion too, and it was a lot of fun. So check that out, guys. If you want to hear more of us talking, it's on her feed at the Kitchen Detox on Instagram. But thank you again. I appreciate you coming on, sharing, really unpacking some stuff that so many people are dealing with, and sometimes they don't even realize that they are. And so just having knowing what to target, what to focus on is so helpful. Well, great. Have a great week, and I look forward to seeing
you too. Keep in touch.
Thanks, Frankie.